Georgia. We've got 7 people here today, actually 8 people here who will actually make comments and answer your questions. We're here today to talk about a letter we sent to leadership last week, and basically the message is very clear. You've seen the letter, is that we're willing to forego some or all of the August work period because we've got some very important issues that we've got to get done and get results for the people back home. The President basically said the first of the year that there were 4 major priorities this year. One was health care, one was regulation, one was tax, and one was the Supreme Court. We're moving on most of those, but right now, even if we get through health care in the next week or two, between now and the end of the fiscal year, we only have 31 working days left. And we have the debt ceiling to get through, the budget for 2018, the reconciliation that goes with that, and the appropriation process to fund the government before September 30th. And then, even if all that were to get done, we've got tax, which is the last thing in the President's agenda that we want to get to this year. And we just want to make sure that we have plenty of time to get all that done. So with that, I'm going to open it up. I think Steve Daines is the first one on the list. We're just going to go alphabetical order, and I'll ask him to make an opening comment. Thank you.
I'm Steve Daines from Montana. Senator Perdue, thank you for hosting this press conference today. You know, many of us here on the stage came from the private sector. There's a lot of private sector experience here. One of the great gaps between the private sector and what goes on in Washington, D.C. is a word that Senator Perdue used, that is results, or the lack thereof. Look at a couple of the scorecard issues linked for the United States Senate for Congress. The budgeting process has worked 4 times in 42 years. That's a 10% score. Of the 197 presidential nominations to agencies, the Senate's confirmed 48. That's a 24% score. 2 out of Trump's 23 judicial nominations have been confirmed by the Senate. That's a 9% score. The Senate's confirmed 23% of Trump's 216 nominations. That is an 11% score. As Senator Perdue mentioned, we've got health care, we've got budgets. We only have 31 scheduled days in the Senate between now and the end of our fiscal year, September 30th, to get a budget passed. This past year, we were 7 months into the fiscal year before we finally passed a budget. So I don't see any reason why we need to be leaving this town in August. We should be here doing the people's business. If you were going to school and you were getting failing grades in your spring semester, you better stay in school for the summer and go to summer school, not take a recess.
Let's see, who's up next?
It's Senator Kennedy.
John Kennedy.
I think most Americans don't really care politically up here who's winning or losing, or who's liberal or conservative, or who's left or right, or who's up or down, or poll numbers. They care about results. And when you look at the issues confronting us, health care, which we're not likely to vote on until next week at the earliest. Jobs and growth, which I think can only be achieved through tax reform. We've done everything we can do on the monetary side. We've got to address the anemic growth in America on the fiscal side. The infrastructure bill that the President has talked about. The budget, the appropriations process, the debt limit, and a bill that's extremely important to my state and a number of other states, the National Flood Insurance Program. Now, anybody who thinks we can get all of that done from by the end of the year, that's just a testament to the power of human denial. We have got to work longer and harder. I don't mean to step on anybody's toes. I know I'm new here, and there are a lot of traditions, and people have things to do back home. But we can't pass bills back home. We've got to be here. And that's the reason I'm here today, is to suggest respectfully to my colleagues that we need to work all or a portion of the August recess and show some results for the American people. I don't know many working class Americans who get to take a whole month off.
Mike Reynolds.
Well, good afternoon. Mike Rounds out of South Dakota. I had the opportunity to serve as governor of South Dakota for 8 years. During that time, our legislative body would meet for basically 40 days and sometimes 40 nights. But at the end of that time period, like most of the other states, we'd get our job done, get things completed in an appropriate fashion before the fiscal year actually started. People could make their plans. They could lay out, based upon what our budgets were, they knew what to expect in state agencies. The individuals who had come in and asked for dollars knew what had been awarded and what had not been awarded in a timely fashion. That's not the way things have worked in Washington for probably 43 years now, and I think, as Senator Perdue has indicated, this process has actually worked 4 times in 43 years. Until such time as we can actually fix this process and allow really good people that work here to get their job done in a timely fashion, and we're probably going to have to spend some extra time here in Washington rather than back in the states during those state work periods. I know there's folks back home that they really don't mind it if we get back in and they get a chance to express their opinions once in a while, but at the same time they expect us to get our work done in a timely fashion. We can't do that right now without spending some extra time here. The reason for the letter, in my opinion, and the reason why I signed on to it is that I wanted to let leadership know that if they could see a way to put together some additional time during August in which we could be productive, that they would have our support. And that this was our way of expressing to leadership our support for their interest in extending the time period, and that they would have support within our conference to do that. I think that's very important that we send that message to leadership, that if they feel that they can keep us in a productive mode during that time period, that we would support them in that effort. And in doing so, we can actually get more of this done. Wouldn't it be nice for the first time in years to actually go back to the American people and say, while we're trying to fix a system which isn't working, we'll at least let you know in advance of the beginning of the next fiscal year what we intend to spend. Wouldn't that be something that the American people haven't seen in over 40? I mean, wouldn't it be nice to be able to go back and say we've actually accomplished something along that line? Healthcare, in the meantime, this is something that I think we're moving in the right direction on. I think we can move it forward, but we're going to need some more time and allow more members to actually ask the right kinds of questions that they want to and feel comfortable with what they're doing. We're impacting 18% of the entire economy. Allow the time to actually get this done correctly. Thank you.
Luther, Stranger.
Thanks, David. Well, I'm proud to join my colleagues today. I'm the newest member of this body, and I'm still learning its ways. But I'm signing the letter because the people of my state and people of this country elected a president to come change the ways of Washington, someone who will work from morning till late at night, through the weekends, to address the issues that have been discussed by my colleagues. We're not doing that when we're on vacation, when we're traveling around the world, as important as those things may be. The people of my state work very hard, the ones that pay taxes and expect their government to listen to them and to deliver. Do not take kindly to the idea that we're not solving the problems they sent us here to solve. We're taking time off to go back and tell them, essentially, that we haven't gotten done what they sent us here to do. So I'm respectfully urging the leadership to keep us here through the weekends. Let us work late at night, early in the morning. After all, soldiers, men and women around this world, are working all hours of the day and night to protect our country. We owe no less than to address the issues and take the time necessary to do it. So I respectfully ask the leadership to consider that. I'm talking about the leadership of my party, and I hope the Democrats will join us, of course, to try and solve some real problems that affect real people's lives. Thank you.
Dan Sullivan.
Dan Sullivan, Alaska. So, you know, the bottom line here is we have this big agenda, and you've heard a lot about what it entails. It also entails rebuilding our military, growing the economy, unleashing America's enormous energy opportunities. You know, when you look at that agenda, what the president ran on, what a lot of us ran on, a lot of it is actually a bipartisan agenda. And what we don't have is time. What we're running out of, you see from this chart, is time. So what do? We can create more time. We can create more time. We can do that. And, you know, you get a sense here, a lot of the members on the dais talking about this are some of the newer members. Mike Lee's the senior statesman right now. He just joined us. But you get the sense when you talk about August recess or any other element of recess, it's some kind of sacred issue you can't touch. Well, I think what should be more sacred in our view is getting things done. And we can do that. We can create the time to do it. And that's why we are respectfully encouraging our leadership and hopefully the Democrats to help create that time, and also to seat a government. You may have seen a Wall Street Journal editorial today talking about some of our colleagues on the other side of the aisle slow rolling, even undersecretaries, assistant secretaries. You know, it's time to get to work for the American people. We can create that time, and that's why we're all standing up here.
Years ago, I heard someone say that the worst thing that ever happened in Washington, D.C. was the invention of the air conditioner, because it allowed members to stay in session longer than they should have. Well, the fact is, air conditioning has now been invented. It works, and it works well. There's no reason why, when we have as much to do as we do now, why we ought to take as much time as has been planned. We have an enormous amount of work to do. And whether you are at the left end of the political spectrum or at the right end or somewhere in between, it's difficult to dispute the fact that there is a lot that needs to be done. At this time, it doesn't make any sense for us to just take the month of August off, and I think we ought to continue to work through it. I also think that as we also even need to look at things like weekends, particularly as we're up against certain time crunches. We ought to be prepared to work long hours and certainly not take this recess. The American people elect us to make laws. And when our own ability to make those laws is thwarted by our own artificially imposed deadlines, our own artificially strict calendar, it doesn't serve anyone's interest well. Not ours, not that of the American people, certainly. And so that's why I applaud Senator Perdue and my other colleagues who are standing firmly on this issue, and hope that we can make some progress. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm Tom Tillis from North Carolina, and I just want to thank Senator Perdue and my colleagues for signing on to the letter. And I also want to thank Leader McConnell, because he shares our concern that for a variety of reasons we're losing capacity in the chamber. They say chamber time is the coin of the realm in the Senate. One of the ways we can get it back is to compress the schedule for recess. And I, for one, think that if we send the clear message as we have, that we're prepared to work. We're prepared to work through August to work on fulfilling the promises and ultimately fulfill the promises on health care, taxes. We could talk about a number of other things that we have to get done before the end of September. This is pivotal in making sure that we have the time to do it. I fully support it, and I again want to thank all the members that are on the podium here, and I want to thank the leadership for working through a very difficult time. I'm optimistic we'll get to a health care outcome. I'm optimistic that we'll get to all these other outcomes, particularly if we stay back at work in August a little bit more than we're planning on right now. Thank you.
Well, thank you. You've heard from 8 of the 10 that signed on this letter. Joni Ernst and James Langford had a conflict, but they have also